Okay, so here we are back again, and Min and I had gone shopping.
Right.
Shopping with some of the proceeds from the members, and we selected out 3 wines, single variety wines, from 3 different places.
3 different places, 3 different countries. Or you don't want to say?
Figure it out.
Okay. All right, got it.
I'm going to put Peter on this.
In the spotlight.
Which of these wines would have been the banker for you? Meaning this is the one. Okay. I not only know this is recent. This is showing a very specific.
Number 3.
Number 3. I agree. Here for this wine number 3 that you said is a banker. Why?
There's this classic Riesling character, obviously, and a balance. When I see something like that, I look at the quality like this. I say, obviously it's trocken. It's probably at the Cabernet or Auslese level, but trocken. To me, it's a toss-up between the Rheingau and Mosel. So I can see you don't agree with me on that. But that's where I am. In the end, I went with Rheingau. Why is it a banker? Just because it's obvious Germanness.
Mm-hmm. I agree.
Not because I definitely knew if it was the false or the this or the that or the other.
And the disadvantage that you and I both have, in that our most intense study of these wines occurred a good number of years ago. If I was tasting this blind back then, it'd be Pfalz or the Rheingau. But tasting it now, it's the Mosel. Because the acidity is pure. The acidity is not as pure as it was back then, but the fruit is better than what it was back then. What I found to be interesting about it as well, just from a production point of view, there's a substantial amount of lees contact to this wine, and also it has elements of, there's some slight buttery characteristic to it. So the wine has undergone malolactic fermentation. So then you say to yourself, okay, fine, where in the world of Riesling are they most apt to have a wine undergo malolactic fermentation, or at least partial malolactic fermentation?
Probably Alsace.
Germany.
Really?
Yeah, where you have higher acidity levels.
Yeah.
And so when you have mallow, in the higher the acidity levels, the more apt you're going to need the malolactic fermentation. The more difficult it is to have the wine undergo malolactic fermentation. And then back in the older days, the level of ripeness was less, and so the less ripe fruit has fewer flavor precursors to give you that buttery characteristic. Rieslings 25 years ago that had undergone ML in the Mosel didn't have any of that characteristic. And now with some slightly increased ripeness, it does have that characteristic.
So we're talking about number 3, right?
Yeah,
Now we're.
Yeah.
So that's the lightest of all 3, right?
Mm-hmm.
I got really, really floral, like rose petals.
Yes.
So that's what comes to my nose right up when I smell. I don't know where to put it. You guys know better, but I put Mosel.
Crisp acidity, Riesling, lighter body. You never go wrong putting it in the Mosel. And putting in the Rheingau is not a mortal sin. It's it's a slight gain. But and again, a Rheingau wine in a slightly less ripe vintage can taste very similar to a Mosel in a slightly more ripe vintage. So this is a sliding scale here. So the second one, tell us either what you like about it.
Second one got a lot of petrol. It's got some honey, citrus, meat to high acidity. I think the other one has a little bit more acidity, the third one, than the second one. Yeah, I would say German.
I struggled with this one. It was my least favorite by far. In the beginning, I thought it was Australian, but it wasn't dry enough. I went to New Zealand. It just didn't have that New World character. So then I came back to the Old World, and I said, okay, I don't think it's Germany, but could it be Austria, Wachau, something like that. That's basically where I was. It was my least favorite wine. In the end, I went for the Wachau.
I do the same dance. And again, it's tough because there's a lot of ripeness there. And they're saying, is it Alsace ripeness or not. In my mind, the Austrian Rieslings fall in between some of the German Rieslings and Alsace. It can be vintage dependent. When you get honey, you can get honey in Riesling, especially if there's a little bit of botrytis.
Yeah.
But yeah, I did the dance. Is it from Austria or is it from Alsace? And ultimately, it was like musical chairs. I finally sat down on the Austrian chair.
On the
Austrian chair.
Austrian chair. Okay,
Yeah,
you
that's
were
what-
in the same place.
I thought it came from Wachau as well. What differentiates Wachau and then German Riesling from all other places?
Austria is warmer and riper.
Okay.
But there's a quality to the Wachau
Yeah.
that nowhere else in Austria has, no matter what they say. The ones are outrageously expensive because they're farmed on slopes like this. You were on that trip, right?
Yeah.
Cruising up the Danube, looking at those vineyards, drinking those wines.
With Ernie Lusen.
Indelibly etched on my mind that.
When you see these vineyards in parts of Germany and parts of Alsace, parts of Austria, particularly from the river, and these not only are these steep soils, what motivated somebody? What hallucinogen were they taking to make them plant grapes on these really steep slopes?
It's worse than that. If you go through these towns, there's no young people there. They took one look at the slopes and they pissed off to Vienna. It's a fact.
Okay.
They won't farm.
And then we come now to wine number one.
Wine number one. So I decided this was definitely not Mosel, because I've got everywhere in the world, old world, except the Mosel.
It's far too ripe for the Mosel.
But it's got that flinty nose.
It does.
Okay.
And then the question is that flinty nose coming from
Sulfur, I think. In this
the
case.
sulfur, or in this case,
Yeah.
sulfur, because just as Syrah is a reductive red variety, Riesling can be a reductive white variety. So sometimes you can get almost a medicinal character to some young Rieslings that have been very reductively produced.
So the reductive wine grapes, you tend to use more oak, so that you have more air coming
Well,
in?
not necessarily more oak, but you have to be careful as to how much sulfur dioxide you add.
Oh, okay.
And then folks can play with how the wine may get exposed to a little bit of oak,
I see.
or maybe a little bit of air.
Okay.
You can get air in a whole slew of ways.
I see.
So for me, in the end, the wine is just gorgeous. Absolutely gorgeous. But somehow or other, there's not the purity of the last wine. The sort of piercing focus. In my mind, more French winemaking than German winemaking. Neither good nor bad, just is. I'm not sure which of these two. I don't particularly want to drink this one. I'm not, well, given that these other two are available. So yeah, that's where I went in the end. Alsace on that wine, Grand Cru probably. Gorgeous.
I like the wine as well, and I did the same thing. But again, if when it's popped insists that it's Austria, but there's a power here. The contrast between what we presume is Alsace, but wine number one, wine number three, cooler climate, much cooler climate, wine number three, and focus, right? And then wine number one, you have power, and they have problems taming that power now with global climate change. I was a masterclass that Olivier Humbert put on, the best masterclass I've ever been to, on a trip to Alsace. And we tasted Grand Cru Rieslings as a function of soil type.
All Grand Crus or just his?
No, all Grand Crus.
Because his tend to be sweeter.
Yeah.
So it's all,
And the problem is that, so if you look at where Alsace is in terms of a north-south basis, it's not that much further north than the wines in the Rhine wines. It's about equal to Baden. A little further north would be the German ones. But it's very different in terms of how much warmth it gets. And the reason being, and how much rain it gets, is that the Vosges Mountains, as the weather goes from west to east, tends to dump rain on the western slopes And then as the air goes across the Vosges Mountains, it gets compressed and warmed and dried. Much the same way we have Santa Ana winds, right? The Santa Ana winds come and we get this dry, warm air. And so the same thing, so Alsace is much riper than much of Germany.
Shall we?
Shall we reveal it?
Sind Unrecht.
What I wanted to show was Grand Cru Rheingen, which is on volcanic soil, but it wasn't there. But this is not a Grand Cru, it probably has some Grand Cru fruit in it, and it's Grand Cru quality. I thought it was outstanding. What's the vintage?
It's 2021 vintage.
And it's the Riesling Roche, R-O-C-H-E, Roulee, R-O-U-L-E-E.
Number 2, if you got a Wachau, that's crazy. Riad Kellerberg, Riesling. How did you get it, Peter?
There's an ethereal character to it, moving away from the warmer aspects of Austrian wine. That took me there.
Okay, I'm curious. If I do a blind tasting, I would like to know what to look for.
Just got lucky.
So, the number 3, 2023, Peter Lauer, Riesling, Mosel.
It's a very nice one.
It surely is. It got my top score.
You
I
followed
scored
the
the Alsace 93, this one 95, and the Austrian wine 88.
What's interesting is as time has gone on, I've liked the Alsace wine more and more. On my first go through, I preferred wine number 3, would have gotten my highest score. And now I think the Alsace wine gets my highest score just because some of the length on the Mosel seemed to have shortened, whereas the Alsace has gotten longer. But they're both delightful wines.
In this part of the world, you had my favorite vintage, which is 2021. It looked like all hell was going to break loose. They couldn't ripen the grapes. The weather was shit. And then they had perfect weather for 4 weeks.
Mm-hmm.
The vines caught up and matured and stayed out on the vine and hung there. And the weather didn't get hot, but it didn't get cloudy. It didn't get this. Just amazing. I was lucky enough to make the wines that I made on the Moselle in 21.
Mm-hmm.
I tasted, while I was in Italy now, 12 Mosel wines that were sent to me to taste. 121 amongst them. The lowest appellation. The best wine.
Yeah. So good tasting.
Amazing taste.
Excellent.
We enjoyed them all, and it was fun blind tasting and talking about it. So dig in, have some Riesling at home, and hope you enjoyed it.
Cheers.
Cheers.
Why did my soul